What's good, everybody? My name is Mr. Peters. Today's video, we're going to be talking about dividing polynomials, and I'm going to show you guys some very helpful tips to make this easy. So when we look in the first problem, there's more than one way to solve this. And remember that we're dealing with fractions. So the first way I could solve it is breaking the problem apart, right? So I'm going to put 12x squared over 4x, and then I'm going to do the same thing to 20x, and I'll just simplify separately. And what makes it so complicated, guys, is that we're dealing with properties of exponents, fractions and fraction rules, as well as factoring. So when I look at this problem, we know that when we divide or simplify that fraction, I should say, we're going to get 3x, right? Because when we're talking about properties of exponents, x to the second power minus x is just going to be x to the first power, right? And then we're going to go over to the second problem, and we should know that we'll just have 5, because 20 divided by 4 is 5. X divided by x, that's just 1. We don't need to put that, right? That's 1. So that would be our final answer of 3x minus 5. However, there's another way that we could do this. So let's go back to the top in blue, and let me show you guys. So let's think about the greatest common factor. So we're thinking about a number that we could divide both 12 and 20 by to make it smaller. So what I notice is that both of them could be divided by 4, and I could also take out an x. So this is what I mean. So if I took out a greatest common factor of 4x, what I would have left over now is 3x minus 5. And once I put the fraction back together, I'll notice that I could actually simplify, right, by getting rid of my 4x's, and all I'll be left with is 3x minus 5. All right, so these are some of the skills that go all into dividing polynomials. So let's go and look into our second problem, right? So our second problem now is focusing on, and let's actually write this out. All right, so we wrote out the second problem, right? And as I look at this problem, the way I want to handle it is I think I'm just going to divide each of them independently. So this is what I mean, right? So when we think about 28 divided by 4, that's going to give me 7, right? X to the fifth minus x to the third is going to give me x squared, right? So far we took care of, and let's just write this out to the side, right? We took care of 28 x to the fifth all over 4x to the third. That's going to be our answer, 7x squared. Now we're going to switch back to red, and we're going to do negative 8x to the fourth all over 4x to the third. So same thing, right? And let's highlight our first answer. All right, so once we do this now, guys, remember, we're doing each term separately, all right? So now once I'm here with our 8x to the fourth, right, I know my answer is going to be negative 2x, right? When we look at 8 divided by 4, that gives us 2. When we subtract our exponents, 3 from 4, we'll only have 1x left over. So here goes our second part of the problem, right? So far we have 7x squared minus 2x, right? And now the last thing we want to do is go and take care of 40x to the second power all over 4x to the third. Now, real quick, guys, let's just pay attention to our exponents. So for the first time in this video, our bottom, the denominator, right, is going to have a larger exponent than the numerator. So our answer is going to be a little bit different. So when we get to this point right here, right, and we simplify this fraction, we are going to get 10 as a coefficient. But when we do x squared minus x to the third, we're going to get x to the negative 1 power, right? So basically, this answer is going to be 10x to the negative 1. And we should know, guys, we cannot have a negative exponent. So I'm going to take this exponent and I'm going to take the reciprocal of it. So what this means is I turn it into a fraction, and only x to the negative 1 is going to go down to the bottom. So once I simplify my answer, I should have plus 10 all over x. And this should be my answer for this second problem, okay? So remember, properties of exponents is so important when we're talking about dividing polynomials, dividing functions. All those rules still apply. All right, so now let's go on to when we are dividing polynomials, but the denominator now is a binomial. It has two terms. So if we look at our third problem, right, we have the trinomial x squared minus 10x plus 21 all over x minus 7. So when we have these type of problems, guys, remember that the denominator, we can't simplify x minus 7 anymore. So it's going to stay the same. But what we can do is focus on the top. And remember, when we're factoring trinomials, right, we're looking for factors that multiply to give us 21, right? So we're talking about 1 times 21 and 3 times 7. I think that's basically the factors for 21. So we want the two numbers that we pick to multiply to give us 21, but when we add them, it equals to 10. So off rip, Mr. Peters, I'm good with math. We're all good with math, the adding part, subtracting. So we know it should be 3 and 7, right? So now let's break this down a little bit more. So on top, I know if I have x minus 7 and x minus 3, that's going to give me that same trinomial of x squared minus 10x plus 21, right? And for us to check, guys, all we have to do is go back in and multiply these two binomials, right? But we already know it's going to be the right answer, okay? I double checked. All right, so at this part right now, guys, what we can do is simplify. So what we're going to do is get rid of x minus 7 over x minus 7, and that's going to leave us with the final answer of x minus 3. All right, and just understand, right? Cancel it out. That's it for the problem. There's nothing else for us to do. Now let's go on to a similar example of this. I'm sorry. So second problem, we have m squared minus 4m minus 45. So what they're saying to us, right, and this is all divided by m minus 9. So same rules apply. We look at this. We know we can't do anything more with the denominator, so we're going to focus on the top. So when I look at my factors of 45, I have 1 times 45, and I have 4, not 4, I'm sorry. I have 5 times 9. And I think that's most of the factors for 45. But we know we're looking for two factors that when we add them, when we manipulate the signs, it's going to give us a negative 4. So I know it has to be 5 and 9, right? Exactly. So we're going to rewrite this, right? So if I want a negative 9 in the middle, right? Not a negative 9, a negative 4 in the middle. Which number would have to be negative for us to get that? And what I want you guys to understand is that the middle sign is normally always going to take the sign of the larger number. So this will be m minus 9, m plus 5. When we look at it, negative 9 plus 5 will still give us a negative 4 when we combine those two. And then when we multiply negative 9 and 5, we'll get that negative 45 on the end. All right. So we know that for a fact, these are the correct terms, or factors, I should say. And this is all over m minus 9. So we do the same thing we did with the previous problem. We're going to simplify, and then our final answer would be m plus 5. Okay. All right. So last problem of the day, guys, and please, If you like this video, you found it helpful, we're going to ask that you hit the like button for us, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment down below if you had anything to add to this video, if you had any questions that you want us to clarify. So in my last problem, the same thing applies. So we have x squared minus 12x plus 20. And that is all over x minus 10. So we know the factors for 20, right? We have 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. And I think that's just about it, right? Those are mostly it. So when we look at these three factors, 1 and 20, no way in this world can we get 12, right? Manipulating a positive or a negative with those factors. Same thing for 4 and 5. There's no way we're going to get a negative 12 when we add 4 and 5. But 10 and 2, there's a very big possibility that we can't get that. So how will we be able to get that? So we have x, and we have our first factor of 2, and then we have x, and we have our second factor of 10. So understand, guys, that c term, we know that c is positive. So if we're multiplying 2 and 10 for us to get a positive answer, they're either both going to have to be positive or both negative. But when we look at this middle term, once we add these two factors, they're going to give us a negative 12. So we know that each of these terms are both negative. All right? We'll bring down the denominator. And just like before, we cancel out, and we know that our final answer will be x minus 2. So thank you guys for joining us today. This is Algebra 1 with Mr. Peters. If you need more help with factoring and dividing polynomials, click the link below, subscribe to the channel, and we just want to tell you guys thank you again for joining us today.